Billy, give me your whole name.
Billie Edward Jewett, or Jewett.
Jewett.
It's pronounced Jewett, and the name does mean little Jew.
Little Jew.
Yeah.
And when were you born?
September the 26th, 1929.
Now your address now is where? It's 358
Well,
Warren.
here it is, 358 Warren in Portsmouth area, West Portsmouth.
West Portsmouth.
But I'm a resident of Florida and have been for about 20-some years.
You have?
Sebring, Florida.
Sebring. Well, what you doing up here?
I got 3 daughters in Cincinnati, and just to keep in contact with the family.
Exactly.
Of course, I got family in Florida and family up here too, yeah.
Now, before here and before Sebring, Florida, where did you live?
Well, I've lived in this house. We've lived here how many years?
How many years have you lived here?
Since 1960.
Okay, that's a long time.
Yeah.
That's 58 years.
But we kept the house when we moved to Florida. And I retired from General Electric.
Okay.
And
when did you retire from General Electric?
1993. And I wrote the procedures under the Reagan administration. We got to go ahead on the B-1B.
You did.
And the B-2 stealth bomber. And I wrote the procedures for the build of that engine.
Where were you born?
On Little Bear Creek, or Big Spruce, technically.
Sauter County, Ohio.
Sauter County, Ohio.
Okay. Now, where did you go to high school?
I went to high school to West.
West High School?
West High School.
Did you graduate from high school?
I didn't get my graduation papers. We were supposed to have got them. The recruiting officer said as soon as I got in the service, I could take a GED test, and if I passed it, I would get my diploma. Well, the first time I sent for it, I took the GED test, passed it. I was in China, northern China. And they said, well, I couldn't graduate ahead of my class. That was their first excuse.
You heard some more after that, I guess.
So, yeah. And then after that, they said, well, you didn't have enough American history. And I've been all over the world. I don't know what kind of history they wanted me to have. But
okay, what was your mother's name and your father's name?
My mother's maiden name was Viola, V-I-O-L-A, Hofer. And Hofer in German means dirt, so they were farmers. And they came to Armstrong County, Pennsylvania first from Germany.
Her parents did?
Her great-grandparents.
Her great-parents?
Her great-grandparents, yeah, that's my great-grandparents.
Okay.
Her grandparents.
Came from Germany.
Then they moved from Armstrong, him and his brother moved to Hofer Hill.
What? Armstrong where? Where was Armstrong?
Armstrong, Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania.
And then they moved to Ohio here, and they fought in the Civil War. They were Teamsters in the Civil War, and they both got a lot of medals.
Okay. What was your father's name?
My father was Russell Harris, H-A-R-R-I-S, Jewett.
Okay. Where was he from?
He was born out on Tick Ridge, up the head of Bear Creek.
There's a Tick Ridge over in Wheelersburg.
No,
that wasn't it.
No, this was a Tick Ridge out in back of Bear Creek.
Okay. Now I'm going to ask you another question. What was your father's parents' names?
Well, my father's parents' names was, my mother's name was Albert Hofer.
Hofer.
Albert Hofer. And he was the son of William Hofer, who fought in the Civil War. And and for payment, they gave him land. And most of that hill out there, that's the reason they called it Hofer Hill. Some people call it other names now, but...
That's out 73, isn't it?
Yeah, it's basically out Botway. Turn there,
yes.
Yeah. And Albert and Minnie Cooper Hofer.
Minnie Cooper.
Yeah, her last name was Cooper.
Okay, where was she from? Do you remember?
She was born and raised in this area too.
Okay. Do you have has somebody in the family done a genealogy and that sort of thing? followed the family tree back as far as they can go?
Well, I followed it back to 1066.
1066. That's back when William the
William the
Conqueror.
Conqueror conquered England.
Yeah.
And when I went in the Marine Corps, our logo is Semper Fidelis, which means always. Semper means always, and Fidelis means faithful.
Mm-hmm.
But our family motto from France was Semper Ideum. Semper meaning always again, and Ideum meaning the same.
I see.
So it didn't have to change much.
Didn't change much, did it?
And that is over 9 centuries old.
What was your mother's parents' names?
My mother's parents' names was Albert Hoffer and Minnie Hoffer, like I told you.
You told me that already. That's right. That's right.
But
and he fought in the Civil War.
And Albert didn't. His father did, William.
Oh, William.
And that's how they come to accumulate the land out on Hoffer Hill.
Yeah.
And William donated land for the cemetery, the school, and the graveyard.
My goodness. Did you have any brothers and sisters?
Yes. My oldest brother is just about a year older than me, was Leroy Russell Jewett.
Okay. Is he still living?
No, he is dead.
He's passed.
He's passed. I only have one living brother left, which is Harold Jewett, Harold Jewett, and he lives up in the Xenia area.
Okay. Did you have any sisters?
No sisters. There was 6 boys, no girls.
Okay. That must have been a house full.
Well, my one little brother died when he was about 9 months old.
Oh my!
So his name was Bobby, and of course Leroy was the oldest, and I was the second, and then we had Gerald Jewett, or most people called me Horace Gerald Jewett. He worked at the steel mill too, and he's dead too. But and then my other 2 little brothers that came along much later. In fact, they were just little cotton tops when I come back from China in 1949.
Okay.
And that was Harold and Roger. Roger was older than Harold. Harold's the youngest. He's still alive.
He's still living up in Xenia.
He's the only brother I have left living.
Were any of your brothers in the military?
Yes. Roger was in the Air Force, and Horace was in the Army.
Army, okay. They must have been in World War II then. Was that right?
Well, no, they were after World War II.
After World War II.
In fact, Vietnam, the one that was in the Air Force, Roger, he was stationed in Japan, and he flew out of Japan to Vietnam to repair aircraft.
Let's see. Now you're married, aren't you?
Yes.
And your wife's name?
Peggy. Yeah, 64 years.
Is that all?
Yeah. Peggy Ann Gillette, Gillett.
Okay.
And I married her when she was 16.
How old were you?
I was 20. I took her back to the base with me, and she was small and petite. And the commanding officer liked to fell over when he thought she was about 12 years old.
Uh-oh. Well, now, do you have children?
Yes, we have 4.
Okay, what are their names?
The oldest one was Billie Ann Jewett. We named her after me and my wife, since I had a girl's name.
So that's daughter.
Yes, and she lives in Cincinnati.
Okay.
She's just about to retire this year.
Oh, really? From what?
From, what's that glass company? They changed the name, didn't they?
What is Indiana Glass?
Indiana Glass.
Indiana Glass.
Indiana Glass. She worked most of her life. Yeah.
So do you have grandchildren there? She has children?
She didn't have any children.
Okay.
But my daughter Cheryl.
Is she second?
No, she was third. My second one was Russell Freddie Jewett.
Russell Freddie. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's Fisherman of the Year in Florida right now.
What's he doing?
He fishes for reds He's the fisherman of the year.
He's the fisherman of the year in
And
Florida.
he's won first place in Jacksonville.
Wow.
He's won first place down in Louisiana. He's in all sports magazines.
You can make some money doing that, can't you?
He does make a little about it, but he's got a beautiful business, air conditioning, refrigeration.
Does he have children?
Yes, he does. He has two.
Two, your grandchildren.
Two grandchildren.
Okay.
One of them is named Benjamin Jewett, which one of the great philosophers back many years ago, if you remember, was Benjamin Jowett, Jowett.
Mm-hmm.
Now, some of the families spells their name that way.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway.
And the other grandchild.
And he has given me a great grandson.
Oh my!
And he was he's just how old is he now?
What? Baby.
4
months.
4 months old, and he looks like he's wearing 9 months old clothes. He's a big one.
He's a big one.
He's 22.5 inches long, and weighed about 12 ounces. He took him by cesarean.
Okay, and now I said your son's other child. What was his name? Him or her?
Cheryl.
Cheryl. Yeah.
Yeah. Now she had 2 children. One of them is getting married this year out in California.
Now this is your number 3 child, right?
Yes.
Cheryl.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Now, so she has, and she's getting married?
She's got 2 kids. I mean, she had 2 children.
Yeah.
Named, I've got a mental block peg. The 2 kids, Cheryl's kids.
Amber and Casey.
Amber and Casey.
Okay.
And she married a Fannin, Roy Fannon's son.
Okay.
Here in Portsmouth.
That's from, yeah, I was going to say.
I worked with Roy at the steel mill.
Now, who's your 4th child?
Is Jennifer, Jennifer, Jewett.
Mm-hmm.
And she married a guy by the name of Rick Hyde, Hyde.
Okay.
And they have no children.
Where's she live now?
She lives in Hamilton.
When you went to high school, you went into the Marines, right? Out of high school.
Out of my junior year, I worked 6 nights a week at the Elks inside.
When you were in high school?
When I was in high school.
Mm-hmm.
And
what did you do there?
I just everything. Take care of the furnace, help in the kitchen.
So you were a young kid then doing all that?
Yes, I was.
Okay.
And back at that time, if you remember, our highways were still brick.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what gave me a lot of strength when I was a young man.
Picking up brick.
Well,
Okay.
not picking up brick, but I ran. A lot of times, there wouldn't be at 12 o'clock. When we closed up, there wouldn't be very many cars coming this way. So I would run from the Elks down to Valley View. I was raised down in Valley View.
Are you talking about the Elks that's down in Portsmouth now, that white building,
No,
or a
I'm
different?
talking about Elks out here, Elks Country Club.
The country club. Oh,
yeah,
I
where
see.
we have our golf course.
You're
Yes.
talking about the city.
I'm thinking of something else
No,
down
no, I worked at the Elks out there.
So you would walk or run.
I would run that entire way. Yeah.
How far was it? A mile or 2?
Oh, I don't know. That must be about 4 miles, ain't it?
I don't know.
Probably
Well,
3 to 4 miles.
Here you are, about 16 years old, and you're working at the Elks, right?
Yeah, and then I that summer I wanted to go in the Marine Corps. So,
Why did you want to go in the Marine Corps?
well, most kids, you know.
Most kids want to go in the Marine Corps?
Most kids, well, if you remember, the United States Marine Corps, those USMC, as far as we were concerned, most of us that went in underage, it was Uncle Sam's misguided children. Because I went in with one guy, he was 15 when he was in the Civilian Conservation Corps, and he lied about his age and then went directly to boot camp, and that was the 1937 Boxer Rebellion was going on, and he was an expert barman, Browning automatic, so they shipped him right on. He didn't get a finished boot camp. They shipped him right on over to China.
When did you join the Marines?
September let's see, was it September? No, March of 1947.
47. Okay.
Yeah, but how I got considered to be WW2, we still had on all the islands when we fought on the islands. If the enemy, the Japanese, would go back in the jungle, we just leave them alone. And so I stood guard against the Japanese on Guam. See, Guam was our staging area.
Guam.
Guam was our staging area in the Pacific.
When you mean
for material.
Stood guard, did we have Japanese prisoners there that you guarded?
No, we had 8,000 hardened Japanese troops out in the jungle.
Back in the jungle.
And they had to have some supplies, so they was stealing ours.
Okay.
And that's what I stood guard over. Yeah.
Okay.
But so for many of us, the war wasn't over when it was over when they signed in 1945.
Okay.
It was not over for us. We still had Japanese and the communists in China to deal with too.
When did you where did you go to boot camp?
Parris Island, and of all things, a guy that, of course, he was much younger than I, and years later, he was a colonel over Parris Island for many years, and he, of course, he got a Congressional Medal of Honor. But how he received that, he was just a lieutenant in Vietnam, and he saved a lot of his troops out of the rice paddies. So he got one of these plaques too that I received. I got him to be our guest speaker at our last China Marine reunion. He lives in South Carolina. Of course, he's a general now, but he writes books and everything. Yeah.
Now, when you got out of boot camp, where did you go then?
Well, from boot camp, I went to Camp Lejeune for further training, and from there we went to California. And so when I was 17, they didn't let me rest. I don't know. I had several incidents where I defied them. And
did you end up in the brig?
No, I didn't end up in the brig. They just give me extra duty. I ended up chasing prisoners when I was 17 in San Francisco.
Prisoners?
Yeah, prisoners. I ended up chasing prisoners.
Marines that were prisoners?
Yeah.
Or sailors?
Well, what it was comical in a way. I was underage, and most of the prisoners I was chasing were underage guys that became disillusioned and went over the hill. So that's who I was chasing. And,
let me ask you this question. What did your parents think about you going in the Marines so young?
Well, when I was 16, I tried to get in at 16, my mother caught wind of it. And so that Christmas, I had bought her a fur coat and a new living room suit because I'd worked all my life.
Is that the money you made at the Elks? You bought her a fur coat?
Well, I worked there. I was a newspaper man for a boy for years too. So it was money that I'd saved up, you know. I bought her a new living room suit and a fur coat, so she signed for me when I was 17.
That did it.
Yeah.
Fur coat.
So I bought my way into the Marine Corps.
What'd your dad say? What'd your father say?
Well, Dad, he probably would have let me go in at 16. Dad was pretty easygoing. He was.
What kind of work did he do?
He worked at the steel mill.
Steel mill.
And a lot of people don't realize that in World War II, every business all over the country had a military contract. So that's just like Selby's had a military contract. And the steel mill, they made 500-pound bombs. And they were actually the main supplier for 500-pound bombs at our local steel mill.
Oh, my.
So they did contribute to the war effort.
Well, here we've got you chasing prisoners in San Francisco now. Now, how long were you there?
That was just in transit, just a few months.
Okay.
And then went from there to Wake Island.
Did you go by ship or airplane?
Yes, we went by ship to Pearl Harbor first.
Did you get seasick?
No, sir. but I got sunburned awful bad.
You got sunburned. Okay.
Yeah, you know, kids, they don't realize what damage the sun can do. And off that water, man, it really burns you.
Okay. You went to Pearl Harbor though. Then
Yeah, I went to Pearl.
how long were you there?
About a month or so. Now I was shipped out of there for, went to Wake Island first and then to Guam. I meant, yeah, that's where it was. From Pearl, I went to Wake, Wake to Guam. From Guam, I was in the jungle guarding against those Japanese.
They were stealing our stuff, right?
Yeah, they're stealing our supplies. And we got guys that had their throats cut too. You know,
Oh, really?
Funny, yeah.
They were still fighting us.
But anyway, I went into the compound one day, and the guy said, and it had rained all day like it had here, and all my clothes is out on the line, and everything is soaking wet. So he said, you got to get ready to fly out with these officers because they need you in China, because we've got a man that's to be discharged, and we have to replace him, and you're going to replace that payroll clerk.
What was your MOS?
My MOS was a cook, but I very seldom ever worked it because back at that time, the Chinese cook did all the cooking and everything.
Okay.
It's just like a lot of times now, even in this country, the civilians do most of the cooking. If you got that spec number, what they do, they use you someplace else. They use you as a jeep driver for officers, anything and everything. And that's what I did, because I chased prisoners again in '49 down at Great Lakes.
You're chasing
Chicago.
prisoners everywhere.
Yeah. Generally, always when they put me into something, it's generally military police, extra duty, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So they used me there.
So you ended up in China. When did you end up in China? When did you go there?
November 1947, I was shipped out of Guam, and we flew out right after a big typhoon. You'd be flying along, seemed like you'd fall 1,000 feet or so. Felt like you was hitting water. But anyway, we got out of that. We landed in Tsingtao, or not Tsingtao, but
Shanghai.
Shanghai. That's where we flew to first. Flew to Shanghai, and then we was there a while, and then he flew me on up to Tsingtao to replace that guy, so he could go to stateside.
What were we doing in China anyway?
Well, we were protecting our rights just like we do in nations yet today. We just protecting America's rights there. Mm-hmm. And of course, we had fought in the Boxer Rebellion, in their uprising, and actually, what we were really truthfully doing in China, we was protecting them from the Japanese. In the 30s, early 30s, the Japanese had went in and they just destroyed a good part of China, killed millions of people. So that was our basic rule in there. Mm-hmm. And actually, we made a mistake, I think, in looking back, you know, you can see mistakes. We should have backed the people of China. But instead of backing the people of China, we backed their government, which was Madam Chiang Kai-shek and Chiang Kai-shek, the government.
That was a mistake.
That was a mistake. We should have represented the people, and they wouldn't have turned communists. Because those people loved the Marines and
Americans generally, didn't they?
Generally, yeah.
How long were you in China?
I was in China from November of 47 until we was forced out in 1949, February 49.
What did you do there? Were you guarding?
Well, I was payroll for a long time, and then it got so dangerous because the communists and the nationalists were both there together, and they more or less had a little bit of a truce, but still it was we lost men to the communists.
Did we?
Yeah. But anyway, they'd have deals where we'd lose men. But anyway, in 1948, we had got notice that we had to leave China. China was turning communist, and they wanted us out by 49.
Did you go to Japan any? Did you ever go to Japan?
No, I didn't go to Japan. No, my brother did, but I didn't.
Now, when you left China, where did you go then?
Well, we came straight from Tsingtao clear to San Diego. And then from there, they shipped us up to the base. We had bought a 25,000 acre ranch,
Who's we?
the Marine Corps.
Okay.
In 1942, we bought a ranch and we turned it into what's called Camp Pendleton today, as a 25,000 acre ranch.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we got the nice part of it. We got all the horses out of put out to pasture from Santa Anita, so I rode race horses there.
You rode horses?
Yeah, and I also where I was at in China in Tsingtao, that was a Tsingtao racetrack where the Japanese surrendered to us in WW2. So we had a racetrack there, and I rode the race horses out of.
You raced horses.
Tsingtao.
You
Well, no, I didn't race them.
uh-huh.
I rented them.
You rented them?
And rode them all over northern China. Yeah.
That's interesting. What did you find when you're going over China and riding over China in a horse?
Well, if you're familiar with the racehorse, you don't ride them; they ride you.
Okay.
That's even the jockeys today find that out too.
Yes.
But they are so high strung that, and the sad part of it is, those people were starving to death, and they all had little crops and things, and that horse would ride right through their fields, and there wasn't a thing I could do about it.
Oh.
I think they thought I was doing it on purpose, but I definitely was
That
not.
horse was riding you.
He was riding me.
Okay. Well, now when you get back to Santa Anita, are you riding horses or racing them?
No, just riding them.
Okay.
No, we got all our good stuff in that big ranch.
You're riding them around California.
And that ranch, that Santa Margarita ranch that we bought, had a lot of missions on it and everything. It's old Spanish missions and everything. And that's still intact like today, like it was back then.
The missions
They more or less kept it all pristine. So the base is really pristine, but there is 25,000 acres there.
How long were you there at Camp Pendleton then?
I was there till in 1949 when I was discharged. That's when I got sent down to Great Lakes. And all during my departure from the Marine Corps, I was chasing prisoners down there.
So while they're waiting to discharge you,
Yeah.
you had this job of chasing prisoners.
Chasing prisoners. And most all of them was the same deal as it
Same
was
thing.
in 47.
You've seen that before.
Kids lied about their age, and then become disillusioned and went over the hill.
Now, Great Lakes is up Chicago, or
The Chicago area.
Mhm.
Yeah, it was Chicago area.
So you were, when were you discharged?
The Navy Yard at Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
I was discharged in 1949.
1949.
I forget the exact month.
Uh-huh.
But then I was just out. Back then, you couldn't buy a job. The job industry, employment industry, was really hurting. So I finally got a job in Dayton, Frigidaire plant.
Are you married at this time?
No.
When did you get married?
Well, as soon as I went back in the service, she had been babysitting my brother's kids.
That's how you met?
That's how I met her, yeah. My older brother,
Yes.
because he lived in Dayton. So when I got called back for the Korean deal, and by the way, that was an illegal deal. What they did, they left our regular Marines, they didn't fool with them, but because we had had experience, fighting and stuff like that, they really wanted us back into the Marine Corps. So when the Korean War started, they illegally called up the inactive. I had to go in inactive for about 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
So when I went into the inactive, that allowed them to called me back up. So I had to go back to quit. I'd spent, oh man, months trying to get that job, and I didn't get to work it, but just a few months. They forced me back in the military for the Korean deal.
Was it the same MOS?
Yeah, same old MOS.
But so you went to Korea then, huh?
No, the big story on that, just before I got discharged the first time in '49, Colonel, our most decorated Marine,
Chesty Puller.
Chesty Puller. At that time, he was a colonel when it started the Korean deal. So he came out to Camp Lejeune, or not Camp Lejeune, Camp Pendleton, where all the China Marines had been shipped back to, and they was all had. He didn't have to retrain them; they was already trained for combat. So he got a lot of the guys, and I had just left. If I hadn't just left and went down to Great Lakes, I would have re-upped for a couple of years and went with him for that landing. But I just missed it that close. But then I still got pulled back in anyway by recalling the inactive.
So what did you do during the Korean War then?
Well, we just did amphibious training there at North Carolina, Camp Lejeune, getting ready to maybe go back in again and make another landing. And for some reason or other, I think it was politics, that they'd been getting a lot of flack. When we first got called back to the Marine Corps at Lejeune, officers and men and all, nobody had salute, nobody did anything. They was really upset because most of them had got married in the meantime. And you had a lot of them who just got married, in a year or two there. And they called them back illegally. And, Truman, he hated the Marine Corps with a passion. I don't know whether you knew this or not.
I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah, he was a cavalry officer, and I think he was a very good president. Now, I didn't knock him for that. But he stated that the Marine Corps he was jealous of the notoriety that the Marines got. And he always said the Marine Corps had a bigger propaganda machine than Soviet Russia. And he was partly right there because we had the Japanese and Chinese and all of them so afraid of a Marine that one Marine could just about chase 10 or 15 of them, yeah. Because they was, when we first went to China, the scuttlebutt was that the Chinese and the Japanese thought that to get in the Marine Corps, we had to kill our mothers and fathers.
That part wasn't true.
That wasn't true, but that's what was said. So they got so much glory, the Marine Corps did, that Truman upset him because he was a stout army man. And he said the Marine Corps had a bigger propaganda machine right at the time that they recalled him illegally, that we had a bigger propaganda machine in Soviet Russia.
So when you went back in, you stayed for what, 7 years then, or what? How long did you stay in the Marines?
Actually, all in all, I had about 7 active.
Okay.
But then, like I told you, I've been a life member of the Marine Corps League, a life member of the VFW, a life member of DAV, a life member of the China Marines, a life member of just about everything.
Okay.
And so I've devoted most of my life. Like I said, I spent 20 years working for the Golden Corral on Appreciation Day, taps and colors, and also for the China Marines and all of our deals. Worked many years doing that. So I feel I've just about worked my entire life.
I think you have.
Military, yeah.
I think you have.
Yeah.
Were you in any battles over there in China or where?
Well, the closest I came to, if you want to call it dangerous situations, is when I was guarding our supplies on Guam. And I imagine that is the very reason that they looked at us and give us discharge papers where we'd fought in WW2. You know,
Okay.
a lot of people don't realize that.
Well, when did the Japanese finally give up and come out of the jungle in Guam?
Oh, some of them didn't do that until many, many years later. They still thought the war was going on all the islands, Pacific Islands.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the Japanese were actually married into the Guamanians and the different groups. They thought they didn't know that they didn't believe that the war was over.
Mm-hmm.
See, communications back then wasn't all that good,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of them, you know, felt they were disgraced if they go back home anyway.
Were you able to take any prisoners of Japanese? Did they finally give up, come out?
That's not. It just didn't work out that way. Finally, most of them got word that the war was over, and they went back to their homelands.
Now, so you went into Korea. When was that? About 1950 when they called you back, or?
Yes, that was 1950. Yeah.
Okay. And you had about 3 years in the Marines then?
Yeah, I'd already had 3 years in. Yeah.
Well, I mean, how long did you stay in the Marines after 1950?
Well, my last deal with being an active Marine was 1952.
Okay.
And also, I'd come home and married her and took her back to base.
Is that when the commanding officer thought she was 12 years old?
Oh, yeah. But of all things, you know, they have subsistence on bases. You know, you can get places to live on bases. They were so crowded during that Korean deal that there was no room on the base. So to live out there, me and her lived with a farm family.
You did?
Yeah.
Okay.
I got made. I made
Yeah,
it.
no tobacco and peanuts and everything. Never do that before.
I was. If I hadn't been a good card player, I couldn't have had her out there.
You couldn't have.
Most of the guys coming in were younger than I was, and out at the Elks, we played cards ever since I was about 8 or 9 years old. Ever since I played cards, so I was pretty sharp on cards.
Well,
I didn't have to cheat. I could. The kids just didn't know how to play.
Well, that's all right.
But that's how I made my money to keep her pay the rent out there at that farm.
That's how you kept your wife in by card playing, huh?
Yeah, card playing, yeah.
Well, now, after you get out of the Marines the second time, what did you do? Where did you go?
I went to Herman Stone Company. Where I was working at Frigidaire, they had people laid off. But by the rules of the game, they were supposed to take me back in. The company's supposed to have to rehire me, but they didn't. So I went to work for a Herman Stone Company.
Where was that, in Dayton?
In Dayton. Okay. And we finished precision plates, some of them all about as big as this room, for put guns and automobiles and everything on. In fact, General Electric is still using some of them that we made back when I was
what'd you call them? Precision plates?
Precision plates. They're made out of granite. You see them in the graveyards. That's that granite you see in the graveyard? Well, they make precision plates out of them too.
Okay.
But the bigger the plate, the thicker it has to be. Some of them was that thick. On account of stone will give, you know, whether you realize it or not. So when you check on precision, and there at last we got so that we just didn't check them with a straight edge or a little dial. We used a beam of light to shoot across it. And it had to be within one maybe as big as this room, had to be in close tolerance. It was for tool makers. It had to be within a cigarette paper, you know, those you roll up.
Oh, boy.
They had to be that close all over.
Now, you were in Dayton there for a while. How long were you in Dayton?
Well, I was, let's see, when was it? 55 when I got to the steel mill, wasn't it? Yeah, in 55, the steel mill started calling up. Okay. By this being my home base, I got a job at the steel mill, and of course we moved back.
And did you retire out of, no, wait, how long were you at the steel mill? I think you said you retired from GE.
Well, 28 and a half years at the steel mill. The steel mill, if you remember,
It went out.
we was losing all of our employment overseas. We lost. That's the reason now Trump is big on steel and aluminum. If you're going to be if you're going to have protection for your own self, you're going to have a steel mill, and you're going to have your own aluminum. That's what he's fighting over right now. Mm-hmm. A lot of the countries. See, we rebuilt. Our tax dollar was designed for us. It wasn't designed to take care of the world. But we've rebuilt the world, really, truthfully, the world with our tax dollar. And they've been taking advantage of us big time. Thank goodness for Trump.
How long were you? So you were about 28 years at the steel mill.
28 and a half years at the steel mill.
And
I worked about 10 out at Evendale there in Cincinnati.
What was that, a steel mill?
No, that was the aircraft engines. B-1B. And
that's GE, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's when I got the certificate for. I made 17 changes in those in a 12-month period. I got a nice big plaque for it and a lot of money, but
well, good on that money thing too.
Yeah, but
okay. Now, when did you end up down in Sebring, Florida? Why are you going down to Sebring there?
Well, and I got a friend I went to school with ever since we've been little boys, Bob Thompson, and me and him got the idea that we wanted to move to Florida. So we got in my truck, my pickup truck, and we went down there and we got a topographical map. Because, you know, just only sections of Florida was only out of water for millions of years. You know, on that, from Lake Wales to down to 70 in the center of the state on 27, that was always out of water for millions of years. So anyway, in fact, that was the reason we wanted to get a high ground. So we got a topographical map. We went to Sebring, which is on that Lake Wales Ridge area, and both bought lots down there. And he worked for Montgomery Ward, and he worked on refrigeration and everything like that. So he actually, when we bought lots, he immediately moved his family down there, sold out up here and moved down there.
Did he work for Montgomery Ward up here?
Yes.
What was his name?
Robert Thompson.
Robert Thompson.
He's dead now too. We both went to school together.
Okay.
You know?
Okay. Well, do you have anything else you want to tell me, Billy?
Well, let's take this off. I'll go get that picture. He might want to.
Here, just.
I'll show you the picture that I got in. I can carry it, I guess.
Yeah, carry that with you. You've got a picture you're going to show us.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've got one in the archives, a poem, and a picture of a lot of China Marines.
Okay.
And I've got them in a lot of different museums.
Okay.
And we got a museum at Sebring that's one of a kind in the nation. The building was the administrative building for the B-17 bomber pilots. That's our museum now, and it's you got about 100 little homes around there. They were for NCOs, but now they're for they're owned privately. But across the street, we still got a store in operation that was our PX when we trained as B-17 bomber pilots.
Okay. Well, let's take a look at that picture. I'm interested in that.
Yeah, it's in the archives.
Okay.
And I got quite a few different museums. I got pictures, and I'm going to put some more out.
Okay.
I'm going next month up to John Glenn's museum and put a picture, because it's got a lot of old China Marines, mostly 80s, 90s, and 100s.
Okay. Did you get a picture of that? Take a picture of that. When he was doing clown work, what did he do? Go to parties, children's parties and
He
things?
went to rest homes.
No, we was in parades and everything.
Oh, parades?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Here it is.
I even worked with the Shriners some.
You did, huh?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
upside down, I think.
Yeah.
Turn it up.
Upside down.
It is upside down, and we'll take
Figure
care
how
of that.
you can want to take a picture of it.
Okay.
But
Can I put it right here on the couch? That'd be a
Yeah.
good spot.
yeah, and since I was music,
You get that.
and taps and everything for the China Marines.
Uh-huh.
This is, you know, they what do they call it? I got a mental block. You know, they pan it. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
With that many people, they had to pan it.
Yeah. Okay.
And so,
I understand.
since I was the only one in uniform,
Where are you?
he put me right here.
Oh, you're right there. I'll tell you, move over so we can get a picture of that.
Okay.
There you go. There
put
you
me
go.
right there.
Right there you are.
And then he said, when I get middle ways, you run around behind me, and I'm there on the other side.
Is that you there
That's
too?
me too. You got a set of twins there.
Set of
But
twins?
anyway, I wrote this poem,
Okay.
and
Uh-huh.
I really intended to write it for all Marines, but since it was a China Marine Association, you know,
Right.
I wrote it and I put that in there that way.
Okay.
But I've got a copy of this in the archives at Quantico.
Very nice.
A lot of men. I'd say most all of them are dead now.
Oh,
Because
most of those men are?
yeah, but they was up in their 80s, 90s, and 100s then.
That was 13 years ago.
Yeah, I'd say
2005.
just about every one of them probably dead.
Yeah.
Not all of them, because I got some of them I stay in contact
That's
with.
what I wanted to ask you, if you're still in contact with some of them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
In fact,
Now, these are Marines you served with in China.
These are all men that served with John Glenn.
In China.
Yeah, WW2.
Is John Glenn there?
No, he's not in. I don't think he's in. No, he's not in that picture.
Okay.
No, John at that time, if you remember, was senator.
Mm-hmm.
He was covered up. He didn't have time to hardly do anything.
He was a busy man. Okay.
In fact, John helped me get my brother-in-law's brother in as governor of the state of Ohio, Ted Strickland.
Ted.
Yeah, John Glenn helped big time.
Yeah. Now, how are you related to Ted?
He's my brother-in-law's brother.
Your brother-in-law's brother. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I know Ted pretty well.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, anything else you want to say?
Well,
I think we got a picture of the clown, don't we?
A little bit of reflection on the glass.
Oh, is it? Okay.
This is as far as I can go, unfortunately.
want me to turn this light out and see if it works better?
Yeah.
Please.
Okay.
Oh, it's the lights on the fan.
These lights
Yeah.
Turn that out too.
There we go.
better? All right. And this is when you would enter in parades and rest homes and things like that.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Toby's Clowns, and Toby of all
Toby.
It's one of a kind museum in America. We're probably the biggest alley in the United States.
Oh my.
There in Florida, Toby's Clowns.
Okay.
And his wife got sick, and he's from the Columbus, Ohio area.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where him and his wife live right now, today.
Okay. Very
Toby's
good.
Clowns.
Well, let me shake your hand, Bill. I
Well,
appreciate it.
Okay, God bless.
God bless you. Thank you for everything you did.
Okay.
All right.